I had been the mistress of the marquis's estate for 20 years. I had treated my mother-in-law like my own mother, and had been devoted to my husband. I had given my all for my children, but all I got in return was, "A wife like you is a disgrace to this family." I was abandoned in a remote courtyard and died alone. Reborn, I decided to live a different life. My mother-in-law wants to become a nun. Fine. My husband wants to bring his mistress into the family. Fine. My son is frequenting brothels. Fine. What they do has nothing to do with me. But then, one by one, they all came to me, begging me to take control. I never thought I would die like this. The wind, carrying snow, cut into the room like a knife. My maid knelt on the floor, weeping. "Madam," they said, "there is no more charcoal." How could that be, a grand marquis's estate, in the dead of winter with no charcoal? It could only be on someone's orders. Me food was rationed, my expenses were cut, and now even the charcoal for warmth was gone. As for whose orders they were, it was certainly not my mother-in-law, who had promised to treat me like her own daughter when I had married into the family. It had to be my husband, who had sworn to be with me for life, or perhaps it was my own son, the one I had carried for 10 months, who now called another woman mother. Another gust of wind blew in. I clutched my chest and coughed, a large mouthful of blood coming up. "Madam, I'll go and get a doctor." No need, it was the new year. What doctor would venture out in this snowstorm to see a discarded wife of a marquis? I had my maid, Willow, move the lounge chair outside. A little while later, fireworks lit up the night sky. Just across the street, the marquis's estate had welcomed a new wife and a new child. This New Year's Eve was of course a joyous occasion. Only I, who had been married into the estate for 20 years and had devoted my life to it, was left with a mother-in-law who disliked me, a husband who loathed me, and a son who despised me. How ironic, madam. The sound of the fireworks drowned out her cries. I died on such a happy, family-filled night. My husband was holding his new wife. My son was setting off fireworks, and my mother-in-law was sipping her new tea. Not a single one of them remembered the discarded wife who had given them everything. Fortunately, the heavens remembered me. I was reborn. At this moment I was holding a teacup, about to throw it at him. "Isabella, don't you go too far. It is just taking a co-wife. Do you have to make such a scene?" I was stunned, the teacup held tightly in my hand. This was 6 years ago. He had had a mistress for 10 years, a secret he had kept perfectly. When I had found out, I had fallen gravely ill. Before I had even recovered, he had brazenly brought her to the estate, saying he wanted to take her as a co-wife. Amelia and I were childhood sweethearts. We were already engaged. If it weren't for marrying you first, I would have made her my official wife. Now, as a co-wife, she will still have to call you sister. What are you so dissatisfied about? I had been married to him for over a decade, and I had never known he had a childhood sweetheart he was engaged to. In my past life, I had thrown that teacup without a second thought. We had had a huge fight, and I had coughed up blood, which had led to a chronic illness. But now, holding that teacup, my raised hand trembling, I felt no anger at all. I had been reborn the very beginning of it all. No matter if you agree or not, I am determined to. Then marry her. I calmly put down the teacup. He was stunned. My husband is not concerned with her being a second wife, nor with the gossip of the world, and is fulfilling a decade-old promise. He is truly a man of sentiment. I took a light sip of my tea and looked at him with a smile. Let's just pick a good day and welcome her into the family. As he stared at me with a look of disbelief, I stood up. Why should I disagree in my past life? The emotional pain was one thing. More than that, I had been concerned about the family's reputation. She had indeed been his childhood sweetheart, and they had indeed been engaged, but at that time she had looked down on the declining fortunes of the estate and had broken off the engagement to marry the son of the Minister of Revenue. In less than 3 years she was divorced for disrespecting her in-laws. Her own family was ashamed of her and would not take her back, but he did not mind. He had taken her in, But if this were to be made public, for the estate to take a divorced woman as a co-wife, and a divorced woman of a colleague at that, what would the capital say, and how would he, in the court, face her ex-husband, who was now the magistrate of the capital? Many considerations, in his eyes, were just 2 words: jealous. This time, I would let him be. The reputation of the estate, his official career. What did it have to do with me? Prepare some fine clothes and jewelry for her, I instructed a maid. Let the marquis know that once he has chosen a date, he should just inform the inner courtyard. Not only did I agree to his marriage, but I also wanted him to have a grand and joyous one. The marquis was getting married again. In less than half a day, the news had spread throughout the estate. Unlike my past life when I had disagreed, and the servants only knew that he and I had had a huge fight, and dared not gossip about anything else. But this time, my personal maid had respectfully delivered the clothes and jewelry. Before leaving, she had said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "The madam asks that you make yourself at home at the estate. When the marquis has chosen a wedding date, he will surely marry you with a grand procession." My maid Clara came back and told me that she had been completely stunned. "Madam, are you really to let that woman marry into the family as a co-wife?" Clara was my other maid, Willow's sister, in my past life. She had died even before I did, but before she died she had remembered to have her sister come to the remote courtyard to take care of me. I put a piece of osmanthus cake in her hand. In the 3 years at the remote courtyard, this was a rare delicacy. Before I could say anything, there was a commotion outside. "Young master, please be careful not to bump into the orchids. Hammy, dear son, had arrived." "Mother, are you that useless?" He kicked open my door. "To just let that woman into the house? The mistress of the grand and loyal marquis's estate, is this how you manage the household?" I was holding a piece of osmanthus cake. I didn't have to put it down. I took a leisurely bite and looked at him calmly. He was 14 this year. I had married into the estate at 15, and had given birth to him in the same year. The birth had been difficult for 3 days and nights. I was on the brink of death, but over the years our relationship had not been close. First, after his birth, my mother-in-law had said I needed to rest and had taken him away. He had been gone for 6 or 7 years. When I had finally gotten him back, he only had eyes for his grandmother. Second, I had only learned later that my mother-in-law, while appearing kind and gentle on the surface, had been secretly sowing discord between us. She had told him that I had forced him to study for my own glory, that I had forbidden him from associating with the other young noblemen, because I hated that his birth had been so difficult for me and didn't want him to be happy. That I had even forbidden him from going to brothels, because I was afraid he would learn about women, get married early, and take away my power as the household manager. This tree, my son, had long been warped. I used to feel guilty. I blamed myself for being weak and naive back then, for not being able to raise him myself. I had tried my best to make it up to him. It wasn't until the 3 years at the remote courtyard that I finally understood. Not all mothers and sons are destined to be close. Am I wrong? He held his head high. Usually, when he was in such a rage, I would have immediately rushed over, poured him some tea, and patted his back, telling him to calm down. But today, I just looked away, and poured myself a cup of tea. "Mother," his tone actually softened. "That woman can be a concubine, but how can she be a wife? To marry a divorced woman as a wife? Won't I be laughed at the Imperial Academy? And besides, will also laugh at you saying, you can't even manage your own household. Is that so? In my past life, he had stood with his grandmother, and had called me a jealous woman who couldn't even tolerate a weak woman. I don't care. In any case, we can't let that woman in. If she marries in, I will disown you as my mother." I smiled. "Leo," I looked at him, "the one who is getting married is your father, not me." He left in a huff. Before leaving, he shouted, "It is all because you can't hold on to father's heart." Clara came to comfort me. "The young master is still young. Don't be angry, madam." I shook my head. "He is not young. He is just used to it. For all these years, everything has been my fault. If my mother-in-law was sick, it was because I had not taken good care of her. If my husband was busy with official duties, it was because I was not a supportive wife. Even if a cat or a dog went missing in the estate, it was because I was an incompetent household manager. Madam, this is a serious matter. Should we inform the old madam? I put another piece of osmanthus cake in her hand. Inform her of what? Wasn't he the one she had instigated to come and make a scene? In the entire estate besides the deluded him, who didn't know that marrying her would be a laughingstock. In my past life, I had been the one to object, so my mother-in-law could stand on his side and accuse me of being jealous. But this time, I had readily agreed. She, who cared so much about her reputation, could not just stand by and do nothing, but she also didn't want to confront her own son. So she had sent him to make a scene with me. Let him, even if he turned the world upside down. I would not say another word about this matter. In the evening, someone from the West Wing came. The moment they saw me, they reported anxiously, "Madam, the madam has packed her bags and is going to become a nun." Very well, the same old trick, it was always like this. Me mother-in-law always had a smile on her face and always said the nicest things. But if something didn't go her way, she would wipe away a tear and say, "I am old and useless. I can't stand to see this chaos anymore. I'll just go and become a nun for some peace and quiet." I had been raised with a strict upbringing, to obey my father at home, to obey my husband when married, to be filial to my parents and to teach my children. This is how a woman should be. How could I drive my mother-in-law to become a nun? That would be unfilial and disrespectful. Every time she did this, I would rush to her and apologize, but now, "Clara," I called, "the old madam is going to become a nun. Quick, prepare more clothes and money and send them to her, and have the steward prepare a carriage immediately. While it is still light. The nunnery will close its gates later." The estate was in an uproar. First, the marquis was getting a new wife. Then, the old madam was becoming a nun, and the marchioness, who had always been in charge, had not said a word. When the servants asked, she just replied, "Do as the marquis says. Do as the old madam says." Clara touched my forehead several times. She was worried I had gone mad from my illness. I told her to get wine and admire the snow. What could be more pleasant? After all, this drama would go on for a while. How could she really become a nun? It wasn't until I had been bled dry in my past life that I finally learned. The accounts she had given me were only a small part of the estate's finances. She held the purse strings, her son and her grandson. She had no intention of letting go. Her so-called handing over the household management to me was just a pretext to use the decline of the estate to get me to use my dowry to cover the expenses. And him, how could he so easily give in? He had been so successful these past few years. And that woman was so cunning. In his own words from my past life, "She is the moon in the sky, the snow in the clouds. How can a common woman like you compare? You want me to make her a concubine? You must be dreaming." Sure enough, on the way out of the capital, my mother-in-law was forced back by him, who was crying and begging. 3 days later, he sent the chosen date on a red card. It was very soon, the 18th of next month. Another 3 days later, she finally couldn't take it anymore and brought the second and third branches of the family, the uncles, aunts, and cousins, to my courtyard. Today was the 15th. In the past, on the 15th of every month, I would gather all the branches of the family for a meal and to admire the moon. Everyone in and out of the estate would praise me for being virtuous, but they had also taught me that one should not live to please others. So this time everyone stared at the single cup of clear tea before them and exchanged glances. "Isabella, is this the only dirty trick you know?" Oh, he was here too. He thought that I had deliberately angered his mother into becoming a nun, and that I had deliberately invited everyone over, and only given them tea, all as a silent protest. "Grandmother, it is just a meal. Is our estate really that poor?" "I'll have the matron bring some food right away," he said, and gave me a sharp look. I pursed my lips and just sipped my tea. "If you are wronged, if you are dissatisfied, why don't you just say so?" My mother-in-law sat in the main seat, her face a picture of benevolence. I finally understood. I had thought she had gathered all these people to persuade him. After all, in my past life, after we had fought several times, He had come to his senses a little. He had sent her out of the estate and had only married her after he had become a high-ranking official, and no one dared to gossip about him. But I didn't think she had just gathered them to attack me. That is right. Mother is the most understanding. She will surely stand up for you, sister-in-law. It was the wife of the second branch. Eitsuke, they all say the daughter of the Kui family is so virtuous. In my opinion, she is not all that. The third uncle of the third branch. I am afraid she has forgotten what her late father said on his deathbed. My father, on his deathbed, had asked you all to take care of me. I don't see anyone remembering that. Aunt, you are the mistress of this estate. You can't just ignore everything. Is that so? When I was locked away in the remote courtyard, no one said a word about me being the mistress of this estate. There were people playing the good cop and people playing the bad cop, one after another. They were practically drowning me in their spit. I said nothing. I just thought I should tell Clara that the next time someone came, she shouldn't even serve them tea. Isabella. My mother-in-law slammed the table. What is the meaning of this? Oh, she is angry. I continued to sip my tea. To be disrespectful to your elders, to be so dismissive. Is this how a mistress of the house should behave? I didn't even bother to look up. Isabella, you probably thinking, a divorce? You are right. The teacup clinked on the table. I looked up and stood up. Mother is absolutely right. I have been disrespectful to my elders and have been dismissive. I have been unfilial to my mother and have not taught my son. I am incapable of managing the estate. Please grant me a letter of divorce and let me go. I curtsied, and before anyone could react, I called for Clara. He had been preparing for this for the past few days. They only knew that the estate had been doing better and better these past few years. But they didn't know how much effort I had put in. The next few years would be the most important for his career. Spending money like water was not an exaggeration. In my past life, I had used almost my entire dowry to cover the expenses. This time, the household management, whoever wants it can have it. In front of everyone, I handed all the account books to my mother-in-law. I called the steward and returned all the keys to the various storerooms. I also inventoried all the deeds to the fields, lands, and shops I had managed over the years. A final curtsy. I am not capable, nor am I fortunate enough, to manage the estate. As the marquis is getting a new wife, I am sure you will find a good person, mother. As for me and the marquis, let's part on good terms and find our own happiness. The large courtyard was completely silent. A moment later, crash, he smashed his teacup. The people who had come to interrogate me all left. Embarrassed, he stayed behind and threw a huge tantrum. He probably wanted to argue with me, but I didn't want to argue with him. A person who is not worth it, to give them even a single glance, is to waste one's own life. Don't you think that by threatening a divorce, I will give in? I am determined to marry her. I shrugged. Then marry her. We have been married for over a decade. You want a divorce in your dreams. I pouted. Then let's not get a divorce. You. He was so angry his hands were trembling. In the end, he just flicked his sleeve. He almost kicked the door down as he left. Madam. Clara came over, worried. I leisurely poured a cup of tea. A divorce. Where is it so easy? My parents were long gone. I had no one in the capital. The divorce papers had to be signed by both him and my mother-in-law, but he had just been appointed as a minister of works this year. If he just married her, he could still use the excuse of childhood sweethearts to smooth things over. But if he divorced me to marry her, he would be impeached. And my mother-in-law, she had been eyeing my dowry since I had married into the family. My father was just a grand tutor with no real power. My mother, on the other hand, was the daughter of the richest merchant in the South. When I had gotten married, the procession of my dowry had been miles long and had caused a sensation in the capital. If we divorced, wouldn't I take all the dowry that was already in the estate's possession? My public outburst this time was just to decisively give up the household management. But I hadn't expected an unexpected bonus. My mother-in-law had actually agreed to let her in. I heard that after she went back that day, she had been furious in her room. Who does she think she is? Does she think our estate can't live without her? The next day, she had relented to him. I know my mother-in-law. She probably thought the same as he did, that my public mention of divorce was a threat, So she had done the opposite, hoping to force me to admit my mistake. Unfortunately, her plan had backfired. The matron came every few days to report on the wedding preparations. I ignored her. My son came every few days to make a scene. I didn't care. On the day of the wedding, my mother-in-law's face was extremely ugly, especially when some servant had made a mistake and had sent an invitation to her ex-husband, and that ex-husband was a real character. He had actually come. The scene was extremely awkward. On the second day of the wedding, my mother-in-law, as if to spite me, in front of me, handed over all the account books, deeds, and everything else to her. Good. I no longer have to use my own dowry to support this family of ingrates. She, like in my past life, was delicate and sweet-tongued. In a few days, she had my mother-in-law wrapped around her little finger. My son also liked her very much after all. She wouldn't push him to study, nor would she care if he came home late. Soon my little courtyard was almost forgotten. He was busy with his new wife. My son was busy eating, drinking, and having fun all over the capital. My mother-in-law was busy being like a mother to her new daughter-in-law. And me, when night fell, I changed my clothes and slipped out of the estate through a hidden small door. My mother-in-law had always looked down on me. In her eyes, even though the estate had had no one in the court for 3 generations, it was still a noble family. Although my father was a grand tutor, he had the integrity of a scholar and had married a merchant's daughter. And me, with a merchant's blood, to have been able to marry into her estate, I should have been grateful. But it was precisely this merchant's blood in me that had allowed me to turn the estate's meager assets into a flourishing business. That small door was from before. I had been worried that she would dislike the smell of money on me, and some things had to be handled in person. So I had left it. But I never thought that it would become my door to freedom. You are? The Grand Princess on the high seat looked at me in surprise. The Marchioness? I shook my head. Your Highness, I am the daughter of the late Grand Tutor Isabella. I am not just good at business. My father was a respected Grand Tutor. From a young age, I had followed my father and had read extensively. I could compose poems at 3 and essays at 7. When I was 10, an essay I wrote about the South was widely circulated in the capital, but my father said that I was a girl and should not be too conspicuous. He had hidden my name and had said it was written by one of his students in the South. I had also been resentful. I had once declared, "In this life, I will not be inferior to a man." But after I got married, I had to put away my books and tie up my hair, to manage the household, to serve my in-laws, to teach my children, to serve my husband. 20 years in the estate. Looking back, I no longer remembered who I was. This time, I will find myself. The Grand Princess had always been dedicated to promoting women's education, and was eager for talented people. While the estate was busy with the new wedding, I had anonymously written her 3 letters. As expected, she wanted to see me. After seeing me, she did not hold my status against me. On the contrary, she was very surprised. The Marchioness is known for her virtue, a model for all noble ladies. I never thought she would have such talent, and such courage. As she requested, I took on the pseudonym, Mr. Heng, and frequented the various tea-houses in the capital. In less than a month, the news of a female scholar in the capital, knowledgeable and eloquent, had spread everywhere. Every day I would go in and out through the small door, change my clothes, cover my face, and alter my voice. No one had ever discovered me. 3 months later, the Marchioness was still ignored. Mr. Heng on the streets of the capital was a hot topic. Another 3 months, the Grand Princess and I had a talk. Isabella, with your current status, it will be inconvenient for you to continue. Do you need me to help you with a divorce? I curtsied. My family's small matters. I dare not trouble your Highness. Please wait another month for me. The truth was, in less than half a month my opportunity came. After being married into the estate for over half a year, she was pregnant again. That is right, again. She had been with him for 10 years, and had been pregnant 3 times, but every time, she had aborted the child. In his own words, she was strong and resolute. She would rather die than have her child be an illegitimate child with no name. She is, after all, a proper noble lady, not like you, like me. My mother was a merchant. It was only then that I knew that my husband, like my mother-in-law, had always looked down on me. After I gave birth to my son, I had no more children. The direct line of the estate was thin. With her pregnancy, the whole family was overjoyed. Until one day, she had a cup of tea at my place. After she went back, she had a stomachache and started to bleed. My courtyard was once again filled with people. "Isabella, I never thought you would be so vicious." My mother-in-law, leading the way, slammed the teacup with the drug residue on the table. "Our state, in consideration of your 14 years of diligent and dutiful service, has given you many chances. For the past 6 months, you have not come to my west wing. You have not served your husband. You have not managed the household. You have not even taken care of your son. All of that is fine. Today you even dare to harm an unborn child." I did not give up the main seat to my mother-in-law. I looked at everyone. "So, what are you all planning to do?" My mother-in-law waved her hand. "Write the divorce papers." Sure enough. I smiled. Simone immediately brought him paper and a brush. He looked at me deeply. "Isabella, you have gone too far. You can't blame me." He was about to write. "Husband, aren't you being a little too hasty?" I stood up. Clara immediately knelt down. Old Madame Marquise this morning, before the lady came, the young master had come. Not just her teacup, but all the teapots in the courtyard were drugged. "Please have them examined, old Madame Marquise." Clara brought out several teapots. Then another servant knelt down. "This is the medicine packet that was just found in the young master's room. Please have it examined, old Madame Marquise." As soon as he said that, a servant with a doctor came in and bowed. "This person claims that the young master's medicine was bought from him. Please have him questioned, old Madame Marquise." My son immediately knelt on the floor, his legs trembling. I turned and walked out. Afterward, the Grand Princess asked me how I could have calculated everything so accurately. To know that she would use my son to frame me was one thing, but to even know what kind of drug he had used and where he had bought it. Nothing I had just been through it once. In my past life, it was just like this. Not long after she had married into the family, she had won everyone over. She had used her pregnancy to attack me. At that time, how could I have thought that my own son, whom I had carried for 10 months, and had watched grow up, would conspire with an outsider to harm me? My mother-in-law, in front of everyone, "A wife like you is a disgrace to this family." He, with a single piece of paper, "A wife like you is a disgrace to this family." My son personally locked me in the remote courtyard. "A wife like you is a disgrace to this family." One by one they had trampled me into the mud, and I had never gotten up again. I went straight to the yamen. By the time they had reacted and chased after me, I had already beaten the drum at the yamen gate. "Isabella, are you mad?" He grabbed my hand. "What do you think you are doing, reporting to the authorities?" I gritted my teeth. To frame one's own mother is unfilial, unrighteous, and unjust. According to the law, he is your son. When did he ever see me as his mother? I was about to beat the drum again. "Isabella." He gritted his teeth. "What do you want?" The commotion at the yamen gate had already attracted a crowd of onlookers. The people who had been following him had also caught up. 2 drum beats had brought out 2 yamen runners to investigate. I gripped the drumstick, straightened my back, and said in a clear voice, "Since the Marquise has a new love, why not part ways? I want a divorce." For a moment, no one cared about the child in her belly. After all, compared to an unborn child, the person before them was more important. My mother-in-law had always protected my son like the apple of her eye. When she heard that I was going to report him to the authorities, she was so angry she almost fainted. But she didn't dare to gamble. When she had married into the family, she had gambled once, and she had lost. If she lost again this time, it would not just be the family's reputation, but the entire family's future. I had calculated a clear account with her and had taken back all the dowry I had brought into the estate. When he heard me talking about money, he was very disdainful. He threw down the divorce papers and left. But on the day I left the estate, she personally came to see me off. Perhaps because I had been so unconcerned with the world for the past 6 months, she felt that I was not as much of a threat to her. She had not been as ruthless to herself as in her past life. The child had been saved. When she saw me off, she was holding her still flat belly, and had a smile on her face. "Sister, I am so sad to see you go. You are a woman alone, and your son is not with you. If you run into any trouble in the future, be sure to come back to the estate." She probably thought that with me gone, only good days awaited her. I also looked at her and smiled. "Sister, you must also have a long and happy life with the marquis, and never be separated. Don't you dare, when disaster strikes, fly away on your own." I began to openly work for the Grand Princess. Mr. Heng already had a foundation in the capital, and I started to hold debates. As more and more scholars and talented men joined, the name Mr. Heng became known to almost everyone. The Grand Princess took advantage of the situation and petitioned the emperor. "If Mr. Heng can achieve such success, why can't the other women in the world? Your Majesty, I petition on behalf of all the women in the world. I ask that you establish a school for women and allow them to study." If any of the conservative officials in the court objected, she would retort, "A woman cannot succeed? Why don't you go and have a debate with Mr. Heng? If you win, then you can talk." With her strong promotion in less than a year, the first women's school in the capital was established. During that year, I was busy with lectures and debates, and it was not an exaggeration to say that I was buried in books. I had no time to pay attention to the outside world. But that didn't stop some things from happening quietly. First, her child was born. It was a boy. The estate was overjoyed and held a grand banquet. Second, it was time for my son to get married. But for the past 2 years, he had been frequenting brothels with a group of profligate young men, and his reputation was not good. The matron who had raised him had come to see me twice, wanting me to talk to him, to at least behave himself before the marriage was settled. Ignored her. As winter approached, another incident that was the talk of the town happened at the estate. My son, with a few of his cousins, had caused a scene at the ancestral hall. The cause was that she had cut the monthly allowance for all the branches of the family by half, had reduced the staff, and had cut the food expenses. My son thought she was deliberately withholding funds for her own gain, but she claimed that his mother was deliberately hiding her private assets. The assets she had were not enough to support the entire family's extravagant lifestyle. When Clara told me this, I was not surprised at all. It had been a year and a half. The shops I had worked so hard to build up should have been run into the ground by her by now. She had driven me away and had given birth to a son. Of course, she no longer had to please everyone, especially my son. I am afraid she was now trying her best to get his title for her own son. My son was almost 16. He was not a fool, of course. He would be at odds with her. I had no time to watch that family's drama. After spring, I would enter the school and become the first female teacher at the first women's school. But after winter came, the Grand Princess specially summoned me and talked to me about some of the estate's affairs. The Imperial Observatory has predicted that there will be a heavy snow in the south this year and has advised the court to prepare early. At court today, he volunteered to be in charge of this matter. Isabella, what do you think? The Grand Princess had always valued me. When she asked this, I knew what she meant. Blessings and misfortunes come in pairs. If there was really a heavy snow in the south, it would be a challenge, but also an opportunity. If he could seize this opportunity, he would be promoted again. But as a woman, the Grand Princess understood me, my devotion, my grievances, my resentment. The Grand Princess was implying that if I was unwilling, she could deny him this opportunity in my past life. Indeed, there was a snow disaster in the south. He had thought of what no one else had. Before the court's money arrived, he had used the estate's private funds to send a large amount of winter supplies in a timely manner, greatly reducing the number of casualties. For this great service, he had been promoted to the Minister of Works the next year. He had become the youngest minister in the history of the dynasty. In my past life, to raise that money, I had sold almost all of my dowry. It was also after this incident that all my private assets became the estate's private assets, and I had no more support. This time, without me, without my dowry, I wasn't sure what he would do, but in any case, the lives of the common people were a major matter. It should not be mixed with my personal, so I knelt before the Grand Princess and said gratefully, "State affairs are of the utmost importance. Your Highness does not need to consider me. Please choose the most suitable person. In the end, the court still gave the matter to him, but the outcome this time was not the same as in my past life. His decision was the same as in his past life, whether it was for his career or for the people he gambled. Before the snow disaster really came, he had used the estate's private funds to hoard a large amount of winter supplies and had sent them to the south. The estate did not have my dowry, but it still had the assets my mother-in-law had hidden. Me mother-in-law had never liked me, but she had always trusted her son. So at first I thought that just like in his past life, he was going to be promoted. But this time, there was also her. He had listened to her and had used her family's servants. The servant looked loyal and reliable, but in reality, he was a traitor. On one hand, he pretended to be transporting supplies to the south. On the other, he had absconded with the funds. After the court's money arrived, he, just as in his past life, was confident that the supplies had arrived, and did not use the money to purchase more, until the bone-chilling snow and ice of the south drenched him. He had taken the court's money but had not done the job. The snow disaster had caused countless casualties. The emperor was furious. On the first day he returned to the capital, his title was stripped, and he was dismissed from his official post. If it weren't for a few old officials pleading for him, he would have been imprisoned on the spot. I heard that the estate had a very hard winter that year. They couldn't even afford charcoal. All the money the old madam had used to try and save him from prison. The next time I saw him was in front of the Grand Princess's estate. I had thought he was there to ask her to plead for him, but he blocked my carriage. "Mr. Hang, may I have the honor of inviting you for tea?" I had always been veiled in public. He had never heard my lectures. He did not know that Mr. Hang was me. I didn't want to deal with him. He followed me. "Mr. Hang, you are a favorite of the Grand Princess. Could you please put in a good word for me with her? I will surely." I stopped and lifted my veil and looked at him. His face instantly turned ashen. He looked at me in disbelief. You Hang is actually, you." He left in a daze. His face was ashen, and he was muttering, "How can it be?" After being married for 14 years, he probably didn't even remember what I looked like. But his dejection only lasted for a few hours. In the evening he came to my house. "Isabella, since you are Mr. Hang, then things will be much easier." Unlike his dejection in the morning, his eyes were dark and bright. "As long as you plead with the Grand Princess and have her speak to His Majesty on my behalf, Isabella, as long as you help me through this, you will still be the marchioness of my estate. From now on, we will be a loving and happy couple, and we will never be separated again." I looked at him coolly and sneered. "Am I a masochist?" He was stunned. "Is your marchioness title made of gold?" His lips trembled. "Your face, your pride. Who gave you the audacity to say such things to me?" He suddenly got angry. "Isabella, who do you think I am doing this for? I've lost my title, my official post. Who do you think is going to suffer? Your son." "My son." I laughed again. "Does he have my surname?" "You, Isabella." His tone softened. "Isabella, we have been married for over a decade. You know that this was not my fault. I did buy the supplies. I even used my own private assets to pay for it first. I was just deceived. How can all the blame be put on me? You don't have to say these things to me, young master. Go and report to His Majesty. His Majesty will have his own judgment." I didn't want to argue with him anymore. I pushed his hand away. As I was leaving, I turned back. Being deceived is also a crime. This crime in my past life I had suffered. This time, it was his turn. He was eventually imprisoned. So many people had died in the snow disaster. The people needed an explanation. Before the verdict was handed down, my mother-in-law came to plead with me, and my son came to plead with me. Everyone in the estate who had had a good relationship with me came to plead with me. I refused to see any of them. They shouted at the door, "Marchioness, you have managed this household for over a decade. You can't just abandon it now." I had Clara enlarge the divorce papers, print them out, and post them at the gate. They said again, "Even if you are divorced, he is still the father of your child." I had the government's arrest warrant for him also printed and posted at the gate. They were still saying, After over a decade of marriage, are you really so heartless? I had them all thrown out and moved into the princess's estate. A month later, his verdict came. The emperor, in consideration of his ancestors' service to the nation, and that he had indeed been deceived, stripped him of his title, dismissed him from his official post, and sentenced him to 2 years in prison. Finally, no one came to find me anymore. Overnight, the estate had fallen, the people and the money were all gone. It was only then that it was revealed that she had run away with her child long before. I was at a tea house, listening to half an afternoon of gossip. Some said she had run away with what little money was left. Some said that the family servant had been deliberately placed by her to get the estate's money. Some even said that she had been having an affair with the servant long ago, that the estate had been cuckolded for a long time. There were all sorts of rumors. Clara couldn't find out the truth, but in the end, I did. That was a year later. She and the servant were arrested by the court, along with the child. It was said that when they were taken to prison, they passed by his cell. With just one look, he started to scream like a madman. I immediately went to the tea house to listen to the gossip. I didn't hear any real news, but I did run into her ex-husband, who had also rushed there to listen to the gossip. I never thought you would have such a hobby, sir. At this time, I was already famous in the capital. Everyone respectfully called me sir. Why don't I tell you? It turned out that when he had divorced her, it wasn't because of any disrespect to her in-laws. She broke off the engagement with the estate because she was worried that he would not enter the officialdom and would be at home all day. It would interfere with her affair with her lover. I was stationed at the border then, and only came home once every 6 months. It suited her perfectly. To be honest, to be cuckolded by a servant is too shameful, so I made up an excuse. Did he never suspect that she had been with him for 10 years and had never had a child for him? How could she dare if the child was born and looked too much like her lover, it would be exposed. And that is the real reason she was so devoted to him. She was afraid of being abandoned by me, so she used a sleeping drug on me. So that is how it was. No wonder I had never been able to have a child after I had given birth to my son. No wonder even her own family had thrown her out. What a childhood sweetheart, what a moon in the sky, snow in the clouds. After I went back, I couldn't help but laugh. He laughed until tears came out. He had deceived me for over a decade, and she had deceived him for over a decade. What goes around, he deserved it. They said he had gone mad. In the prison, he wouldn't eat or drink, just cried and laughed. My mother-in-law, or rather, the old madam, also fell ill after this. Her matron had come to see me many times, saying she had something to say to me. Ignored her. Until one snowy day, the matron said she wouldn't make it through the night. When I went, she was lying on the bed, her breath shallow. She looked just like I had in the year I had died. Do you remember my 50th birthday? You invited chefs from all over the country. We won tables, won dishes, so many people, all surrounding me. They said I would live a long life, that our estate had a limitless future. And that year, I don't know where you got so many fireworks. She rambled on, talking about the glory days of the estate. Finally, her cloudy eyes fixed on me. Isabella, in the end, it was our estate that wronged you. The estate is long gone, I said. The light in her eyes flickered out, and she shed a tear. Old madam, I looked at her now skeletal form. I lost my mother at 10. From the day I entered the estate, I saw you as my own mother. What did I ever do to displease you, to make you so critical of me? In my past life, I had been obsessed with getting her approval. I had given everything I could, but she was never satisfied. Reborn, I finally understood. Worth did not need to be validated by others. She looked at me. Her usually sharp face was now blank. After a long moment, she stammered. But I also threw it like this. Another year, he was released from prison. I hadn't seen him in the capital. I just heard that her grave, which had been on the execution ground for a year, had been dug up. Time passed quickly. In 2 years, more and more students had enrolled in the school. Besides me, another woman from a scholarly family, against her family's wishes, had come to teach at the school. With children, time is always bright and happy. These past few days, when I was coming and going from the school, there was always someone following me. It was my son. Other than the time he had come to see me when he was in prison, I hadn't seen him in a long time. He had grown much taller. He was wearing plain clothes and was so thin, he was almost unrecognizable. He probably knew I wouldn't talk to him, so he didn't get too close. After she had passed, the only matron who had served her had also left. The estate's fortune was long gone. There was nothing left for him. I know he had looked for work everywhere. Manual labor, he couldn't do. Intellectual work, he had none. Selling his smile in a few days, he would offend the customers and end up owing money. Now he was relying on the calligraphy I had forced him to practice to sell some paintings and barely get by. Perhaps because he saw me staring at him today, he took a few steps forward. "Mother," his voice was choked. I turned my face away. He also stopped. I was about to leave. "I am sorry." That year, his voice was as thin as a mosquito's. "She said you hadn't taken care of me for a few months. She said she was just teasing you. I didn't know it would be like that." In his past life, he clearly was not unaware. This time, he was a few years younger, but whether he was or not, I no longer cared. I turned and took out the silver I had prepared. "Here is 300 taels of silver. It is enough for an ordinary family to live on for 3 years. I looked up at him. "You have 3 choices. To pass the imperial exams at 20 and become an official is not uncommon. To learn a trade at 20 and support a family is also very common. To be homeless at 20 and die on the streets is also a possibility. Of course, you can also live for today and return to your old ways in 3 days. The choice is yours. You just have to know that there is no turning back in life." I put the silver in his hand and turned to leave. I had done my part. Whatever he chose, it had nothing to do with me. The sun was very bright that day. Just as I entered the school, a child who was drying books ran over. "Teacher," she hugged my leg. "That person just now," they said. "He is your son. Is that true?" I took her hand. "Yes." "Then why aren't you taking care of him? He looks so pitiful." "What does it mean to take care of? Like hug him, comfort him, like you do with us, teach him? He is already grown up. He doesn't need that anymore." Teacher. But I read in a book that a daughter obeys her father, a wife obeys her husband, and a mother obeys her son. A woman should see her father, her husband, and her son as her heaven. Only then is she a good woman. The book is wrong. Then why do all the books say that? Because I knelt down and ruffled the little girl's head. Those books were all written by men, by fathers, by husbands, by sons. Then in the future, will there be books written by women? There will be. This is the meaning of here. Right.